Imagine an ammonia analyzer that practically runs itself. With Hach's NH6000SC, you get an instrument that automatically calibrates, validates, and cleans. While smart diagnostics keep performance steady, its durable design means the compressor lasts twice as long, and maintenance just twice a year. Reagents last 6 months, and you can choose lightweight or rugged filters that fit your site's needs. Plus, remote monitoring lets you check on your samples anytime. Behind it all is Hach's expert team, backed by decades of innovation in water quality. Head to scalinguph2o.com/Hach and discover how it can free up your day. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation, it's Trace Blackmore, and I want to highlight how Aquaphoenix Scientific is innovating water treatment. Whether you need precision testing or advanced technology, they deliver solutions that make water treatment smarter and more efficient. Their technology brands, Aliquot, Flight, and TankScan, are leading the way in connected water treatment. Aliquot simplifies data management. Flight ensures reliable remote monitoring, and TankScan optimizes tank level management. Aquaphoenix Scientific believes in a tailored approach, working closely with your team to customize solutions that meet your unique needs. That means you get solutions that are designed specifically for you, ensuring you achieve your goals. So if you're looking to modernize your water management, head over to scalinguph2o.com/APS. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/APS. Aquaphoenix Scientific, your one-stop solution for smart water and chemical management. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, your host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And nation, how did this happen? It is December. December 5th is when this show is airing, and I don't know where the year has gone. I really remember just a while ago, it seems, I was preparing for all the stats of the show so I could share with you what happened the previous year. Well, nation, I'm actually doing that now. We're getting all those stats together so I can talk about 2025. I just feel that this year has blown by. I don't know if you're with me. I don't know where the year has gone. Now, we did a lot of great things within the year, and I'm going to tell you all about them on the last episode of the year. That's something I started doing a while ago, and the Scaling Up Nation really enjoys that. And I got to say, it's a really good therapeutic item for me to do, because I get to see all of the cool things that we did in the past year, and it really gets me excited for the next year. Now, that actually came from a recommendation from one of the members of the Scaling Up Nation. So, Nation, don't think that we do not listen to your suggestions. We crave your suggestions. And just like the idea of somebody saying, do a recap of what happened the previous year on one of the last episodes of the year, that's now become one of the cool things that we do each and every year. And it really allows me to kind of celebrate and plan for the following year. So thank you, Scaling Up Nation, for that. And thank you to everybody that came up to me at the AWT conference. I got so many good ideas. I got a list of guests. I've got a lot of handshakes saying thank you for putting this podcast on. It really helps in my day-to-day when I'm going from account to account. Sometimes people said that they didn't see anybody throughout their day, that they were driving for hours to one account, and then there would just be a boiler room there or a mechanical room where nobody was stationed there, and they were all by themselves as they were running the test. And many people that had a similar story would say they would use the Scaling Up H2O podcast to remind them that they're not alone, to remind them of all the great work that they're doing and what the great work they're doing means to not only their customer, but the entire world. Nation, we are in an awesome industry, but sometimes it can be a little lonely. So just knowing that we are part of the Scaling Up Nation makes that a little bit easier when it counts. Well, Nation, we just have a few episodes left of 2025. Like I said earlier, we're going to do a recap episode later in the month. So stay tuned for that. We still have some great episodes left for December. And December typically is the highest month for sales, which I always find interesting because people realize there's no more months left. And if they're going to hit those sales quotas, they've got to get out there and do it. Well, Nation, it's my hope that you've been doing that all along since January. But if you've got some ground to cover, December's always a great month to do that. And if you knock December out of the park, I want you to consider what happens if you do that each and every month? What happens if you take the momentum that you get this month and you apply it in January and February and so forth? Wow, what an amazing year that is going to be. Well, I'm, of course, alluding to we normally do goal planning coming up in the first episode of the year. I love planning goals. I love achieving goals. No, I love crushing goals. That's what I love to do. And I hope to share some of that with you. I hope to inspire you with some of the tools that we use in the Rising Tide Mastermind so you can crush 2026 just like hopefully you are crushing 2025. Nation, now is the time where I'm going to tell you about some conferences that are coming up. And what a great time to plan because hopefully you are starting to look in your calendar for events that you can go to just knock your learning for industrial water treatment out of the park. Where are you going to meet new people? Where are you going to learn new things? Where are you going to challenge what you already know? And that is what I hope you do whenever we mention events on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Now, several people came up to me at AWT and they made the comment that I didn't even know that this was in my backyard and I was able to go to a particular conference. So, Nation, that's what we're hoping to do with telling you about events that are going on the Scaling Up H2O podcast each and every year, each and every month, so that way you can find new things about the industry that you love. Now, here's the thing. We only talk about so many each and every week, and there are so many more that we just don't have time to talk about. So it's my hope that you are going to the events page by going to scalinguph2o.com, going over to our events section. And folks, there are hundreds of potential shows for you to go to. A great way to use your December is to plan your next year. And my ask is that you go to our events page at scalinguph2o.com and you start planning for next year. Now, one of the conferences you might want to go to is going to be the Membrane Technology Conference taking place in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Who wouldn't want to go there? That's February 2nd through February 7th. And we're, of course, going to have all of that information for you on our events page. This is hosted by the American Waterworks Association, and we talk a lot about them on this podcast. So, Nation, that might be something that you want to attend. And another one to check out is the annual Water Reuse Symposium, and that's going to be in Los Angeles, California. We're, of course, going to have all the information you're going to need to find out more about that show and register. And we're going to have so many more shows on our events page. Nation, take a little time this December. Start planning out 2026. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you are going to meet that's going to be able to solve that problem that you haven't even had yet. You're going to be able to challenge the way you think. You're going to be able to learn new things. Nation, I hope you get out there next year and you go to at least one of these conferences and you are going to become a better water treater in the process. Well, Nation, one of my favorite things to do is to meet new people. And I tell you, having this podcast is just amazing because not only do I get to meet new people, I get to meet new friends. And our next guest has definitely become one of my new friends. Here's that interview. My lab partner today is Dr. Annette Davison, the water risk doctor and co-owner of the Risk Edge Group. Annette, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Trace.
We are very excited to have you on the show. Would you mind sharing with the Scaling Up Nation what your day-to-day looks like?
Oh, gosh. It can be very different. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of desktop work, but sometimes I might be in the field. So I may be going up to Brisbane to run a mediation workshop, or I may be going to the Middle East to do work in the Gulf and in the field and talking to different stakeholders. Or I might be talking at a local high school on what a marvelous career it is having a career in water. So it just depends.
And what type of work does the Risk Edge Group do?
So our mission is really to help protect people, processes, and the planet from exposure to contaminated water. And we do that through a series of documents, templates, training, tools, audits, everything to do with making sure that water is protected wherever and whenever it is used. And that might be, as I said, workshops or training or just helping people improve the systems that they have.
Now, you and I met over LinkedIn, and what a great resource to cross borders and meet people within this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like water, isn't it? LinkedIn knows no boundaries.
Now, you all produce a lot of content for LinkedIn. How do you figure out what you want to put on social media?
It's a really good question. Most of the time, it's what we think people might be interested in, and knowing the people that we work with and the broad range of people that we work with, we just go, so-and-so might like that particular, bit and piece or whatever it might be. But we've started a resource called Incidents Online, which is a freely available resource. One of the things that we really want to do is give back to the industry, and helping people understand the events that have happened can really help people then to learn from that and help protect themselves. So that's also a really great, well, we think is great resource that we can put out there, and we put snippets of that on LinkedIn as well.
Now, if somebody was looking for that on LinkedIn, how can they best find that?
So that is on our website. So it's riskedge.com.au. If you go to that website, you'll be able to find Incidents Online as one of the pages.
I will make sure to have that on our show notes page as well. Now, you have so many accolades, but the one that really caught my eye was you were the Australian Water Association's Water Professional of the Year. How does one get that honor?
Okay, well, firstly, thank you very much for that. It's an award that I hold very dearly. The Australian Water Association is something that I've been involved with for many years, and they do amazing work on the ground and also quite a lot of international outreach now as well. So to get that particular award was amazing. So it's really based on what you've done over the last 5 years in the industry. And part of the reason why I won was the work that I do in risk assessment and risk management. But also, we'd started a social initiative through the business. So we feel that it's really important to give back to the communities in which we work. So we started an initiative called One Street, and that's where we aim to increase social, community, and environmental connection one street at a time. And as part of that, we're developing an initiative called One Creek, where we're really trying to improve awareness of and caring for our urban waterways, one creek at a time. So that was part of the reason why I won the award.
And you have a background in environmental biology and law. And with that background, you have shaped how you do risk assessments. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing for me was I actually started as a microbial ecologist of all things, and fungi were my first love. They were really fun guys. But then I moved into the soil side of things, and we were looking at how we could use microbes to clean up contaminated sites. So first of all, I started with organochlorines, hydrocarbons, and it's amazing how microbes will chomp away at these things and use them as a food source and help clean up sites at the same time. But I realized that I didn't understand the legal side of things. So after my PhD, I went back and did a master's in environmental and local government law. That exposed me to how much, I mean, I've always loved words, but how much I really love law. And then that got me into really focusing on water quality governance. So that's what we do a lot of now in Risk Edge. And you can't do a good risk assessment unless you've got the context right. So we put a lot of effort into understanding stakeholders, the legal and formal requirements, your geographic context, your water quality context, your water resource context. So all of that, all of my background has really started to focus in on that key area of water quality governance.
Now, you mentioned risk assessments, and you were instrumental in ISO 31000. Can you explain what that is and how that helps people do risk assessments?
Absolutely. So the standard itself, ISO 31000, is an international risk management standard. So we weren't involved in that particular standard as such, but what we have done, and I have a mentor in the States as well, Greg Hutchins, and he has been fantastic. And we talk a lot. He's in Oregon. And so he said, Annette, why don't you have a look at applying ISO 31000 to water? Because nobody has done that yet. So that's what we did. We had a look at using that standard and then saying, well, okay, what are the things? How would you apply this standard if you were looking at water quality, for instance? So now we've developed our own standard and framework called Water 31K, 31,000, which we have been using and trialing quite a lot now for various products and services. The great thing about ISO 31000 and our Water 31K is that they're jurisdictionally agnostic. And because we work across the globe, we wanted something that would allow us to not worry about the jurisdiction that we were working in, because they're all different. Everyone has to have their own guidelines and laws and things. And the other frustrating thing is that there are different guidelines for different water products and services. So just in my own country, we've got the Australian drinking water guidelines. We've got several sets of the Australian guidelines for water recycling. We've got recreational water guidelines. So we wanted a Lord of the Rings framework that would allow us to bring everything together and allow us to, just look at any product or service anywhere that we were working. And it's been working really well.
Now, how will you get called into a particular site?
That's a good question. It just depends. We now have a really good reputation for the work that we do, not only the standard, but also that it's very practical. So that word's got out, and a lot of the work that we get is just word of mouth. People talking amongst each other and say, oh, you should get Annette and Sarah to come and have a look at that for you. So Sarah Loader is my business partner and co-owner of Risk Edge as well. So she's really interesting. She's an engineer with a master's in management accounting. So she loves the numbers and I love the words. So we have, if you look at the Venn diagram, we got a bit in the middle where the magic happens. So yeah, it's really good.
Can you share a case study with us where you were involved?
So I think the best case study that I can give is probably the training that we do. And we've just actually been called on by the Backflow Prevention Association of Australia to help them with their training. And we now have a backflow prevention training course available. It's just launched actually. But after the training and even during the training, it's really great to see the light bulb go on in people's heads when suddenly they realize, oh, now I understand why I'm being asked to do X, Y, Z, because it has these implications if I don't. And quite often people are asked to put in place a procedure, just do it this way, but there's none of the why associated with it. And operators, for instance, are so important in the water industry. They really are at the front line, and they have the power to make things great or really stuff things up. So it's important that they really understand why they're doing what they're doing. But similarly, directors and officers at the top of the organization, if they don't understand what they're doing and they're not approving appropriate funds, for instance, to make sure that the water utility can be sustainable and into the future, then it's never going to work. So we're actually doing some training at that level now as well, which has been absolutely fantastic, because oftentimes on boards you get people who are legally trained, financially trained, but not often you get a good sample of people who really understand the water industry. You might get one person on the board, for instance, who understands that. So making sure the whole cohort understands that is really important. So I would say from a case study perspective, the training is where I get most of my value in the business as well. I love it.
Now, in following you on LinkedIn, I've learned that you like to start your training with the water supply chain. Can you do a little bit of that with the Scaling Up Nation right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we break that down to a fairly conceptual supply chain. So we start from source to endpoint. So it would be, where's your water coming from? How do you collect it? How do you transfer it to where it needs to go to? How do you treat it? Then once it's treated, how do you distribute it? And then which customers does it go to? And then across that supply chain, it's important to understand what are the governance handover points? Who has custody of the water up to, point A? Once it's got past point A, the people on the other side, are they getting the water that they thought they were getting? What are the water quality objectives at that handover point? Have they been clearly articulated? Have you got an agreement in place? Does it stipulate who has to do what, when, where, and why? And if something stubs up, what communication do you give to the person receiving that water? So we look at water all across that supply chain. The other thing I wanted to point out as well, that often people almost forget about the water once it's left treatment. It's like, oh, well, we've treated the water, it's fit for purpose. We're just going to release it into the wild of the distribution network and let it fly free. And then because a lot of the assets are invisible, they're in the ground, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. But we have plenty of opportunities to really stuff up that water and make it not fit for purpose anymore. And there've been some, I'm going to say great examples, but not for the poor people who had the water, because in some cases, quite a few people died from distribution system incidents, including one in Gideon in Missouri, actually. So it's really important that we understand, not only do we need to treat the water to the right level, but along the supply chain, how do we keep it fit for purpose until it gets to the customer? So that's what we're really interested in. And the other thing too is, it's not just important to look at the infrastructure and assets that we do have. It's like, how do we plan for the future? So there's another workflow that we look at too, which is strategy to operations. So how do we strategize? How do we plan? How do we design properly? How do we construct? How do we commission? And then is it relevant for operations? So all of those things need to be understood as well.
When you are looking at critical control points, how do you make sure that you're discovering and documenting the right ones?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because we've been in this game for a while. And when we first started, we did what we thought was right for the water industry, because critical control points started in the food industry. And for the listeners, it was originally started to stop astronauts getting gastroenteritis in space. So if you can imagine, having diarrhea in a no gravity situation could be quite underwhelming. So
Absolutely.
So we were really feeling our way a lot at the beginning with critical control points. We're way more defined now, but it's really a matter of having a look, like, can a critical control point be assigned here? Could you detect an abnormality in the water that makes you think it might not be fit for purpose? Could you stop the water going from that point in the process into the supply chain so you're protecting your customers? And I would say that the biggest thing that's really helped us get it right is asking the question, could a computer understand this? So we've worked with a coder in another company I was involved with, I'm still a shareholder in, which is D2K Information. And we developed a module called CCP Watch. And our coder, James Lucas, kept asking us questions. Well, there's a gap here in the, if you look at this envelope, then there's a gap before it moves into the next state. What's with that? A computer won't understand that. So we now just keep asking ourselves the same question, would a computer understand this? And it's really helped hone the way that we look at critical control points and get them right.
Now, since you opened this can, I'm curious, where do you see AI in the future helping us with water management safety?
So we've got some interesting ideas around that we're developing up in a separate digital product, but that's just under wraps at the moment because that's something that we're just developing, but that's quite exciting. But a couple of things around the AI. So I think it's got huge potential, and I've been using it myself just recently as well to give it incidents from incidents online and say, please have a look at this, help me look at, what the key root causes are. And it just spits it out and it's fantastic. But I believe that the biggest area for us in the water industry is, and I was reading about this on LinkedIn the other day, something that has the absolutely unfortunate acronym of AS, which is Agents as a Service. And it's where we will start developing agents that we train through large language models. And we actually train them to help us identify where things might be occurring. So I think that's a big area. But I would say as well that there's a big rush to AI, but we're still not getting the basics right. So that's, I think, where we need to be concentrating a lot of time, making sure that we understand our systems, making sure that we're monitoring at the right place, at the right time for the right things, making sure that we understand the risks across our supply chain. A lot of that falls through the cracks, and AI is not going to help us until we get the right inputs to AI. Let's get the basics right first.
I love hearing you say that. So many people jump to it's such a great tool. We need to put more in it. But you're right. If we don't build the foundation, we're never going to get the outputs to where we need them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's looking into the future. Let's look in the rearview mirror. How has COVID-19 helped us develop water management plans?
It's a really interesting question. It's helped in a number of ways, I think. Maybe an example I can give is from auditing. So, when we were doing audits during the lockdown, it was very difficult, as you would imagine, to be able to go out on site and do the site verification. So, we had to get creative. We had to get operators who were essential workers and so who could be on site to go around with their iPhone or whatever smartphone they had. And so we'd be looking at things on their cameras. So we'd be on Teams. They'd be on Teams with their camera. We'd direct them to look at different bits of assets and stuff. For instance, if we were verifying a flow diagram for a treatment plant, that's really helped. It's also made us look at the inputs that we use for treatment, for instance. So we have an incident that we looked at where because of COVID, a lot of oxygen was required for helping people with their breathing. And so it meant that oxygen wasn't available for production of ozone. So there became a supply chain issue. So it's really made us go back and have a really good look at our supply chains. And similarly, we weren't able to get people to go across borders to calibrate instruments. So that also was something that we needed to look at, and developing a local capability, I suppose, was something that it pointed to. So it's really had a lot of tentacles in a lot of areas.
If your job wasn't interesting enough, doing it in one location, you're doing it over multiple countries. How do you do that? How do you keep all the different laws, all the different protocols straight to make sure you're getting the right product?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thank you. And that's the bit that I love, actually going into different jurisdictions and teasing it all out. I know it might be a bit sad to admit that, but I have to say that a Water 31K framework has really helped with that as well. It gives us a common language. So we can just go into a jurisdiction now and go, okay, who are the stakeholders? What are their drivers? Which legal and formal requirements are they responsible for administering? How do you report to them? Who is responsible for setting the requirements around water quality? What do you need to do? What do you need to do internally? So going through all that suite of questions just helps everything fall out. And it's now a standardized approach that we have to doing that. So that was the whole reason for developing Water 31K as well.
Hold on to your test kits, folks. We're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Metaspec, the new name for Pacific Sensor. While the name has changed, they're the same trusted partner you've relied on for decades. Metaspec supplies corrosion coupons, racks, holders, LPR electrodes, and corrosion coupon analysis. Everything you need to monitor corrosion in water treatment. Both their Texas facilities in San Antonio and Dallas are ISO 9001 certified, and their corrosion coupon lab is the only ISO 17025 accredited corrosion coupon lab in the world. They're also the only manufacturer using OCR camera technology to tie every coupon ID to its weight, ensuring precise and verifiable results. Every Metaspec product is proudly made in the United States of America. Ready to simplify your corrosion monitoring? Visit scalinguph2o.com/Metaspec and put Metaspec to work for you. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Metaspec. Metaspec, precision, speed, confidence. And now, back to our interview. Now, locally, laws can change and we have to stay on top of those, but you have multiple countries you have to stay on top of. How do you do that?
Well, not even the countries, Trace. Australia is one of the most complicated countries I have ever worked in. So we have states and territories, and then we have an overarching Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth will set guidelines, for instance, like the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. And it has other laws as well, like protection of biodiversity and that type of thing, and also laws associated with fitness for purpose of a drinking water product. So we have all of that across the top, and then you'll go into the state and territory. They will then have their own law, like a Safe Drinking Water Act, for instance, or Public Health Act. And then, depending on what type of utility you are, whether you're a local government utility, whether you're a metro utility, or whether you're a private utility, each one of those will have their own legislation. And some of them will be working under an operating license. Some of them will be working, so our local water utilities, for instance, that work under the Local Government Act or the Water Management Act, then are governed by the Public Health Act, which is covered by New South Wales. They administer that. Other utilities are governed by the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, IPART. This is all in New South Wales, by the way. So it just depends who's doing what, where, when, and why, and whether is it just drinking water, is it sewage management, is it recycled water? Each one of those has different requirements as well. So it's a lot.
Now, what do you do? Because I know it happens here in the States, it has to happen there when two different guidelines or laws contradict each other.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think at the end of the day, we really have to look at the balance. And if anyone working in risk will know that there will be competing risk endpoints or competing, Tim Leach on LinkedIn calls this mission critical objectives. You have to balance those and make sure that you're getting the best outcome. And sometimes it might be having to be more conservative. And Also around that question as well, if there's a guideline in a country that you know is not strict enough because you've seen something happening in another country, then it's important that you know that as well, because your own guidelines might end up going there. So we do a lot of that as well. We do a lot of environmental scans to make sure that we advise our clients properly about, what's coming down the line for them as well and what they need to get ready for.
Earlier, you mentioned One Creek. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's been really interesting actually. So I'm part of a community group through Rotary, and it's called the Ku-ring-gai Community Rotary Network, affectionately known as the Kraken. And so there's a group of like-minded individuals, and it's been set up for busy people who still want to volunteer. So we have pockets of time that different people can help with. So Rocky Creek is the creek that runs down the back of my house in the valley, and it's really unloved. We get smells of sewage coming up every now and again, where the assets, run along the creek and maybe leak periodically. We've got all of the runoff from local urban areas, so we have nutrients going into it. We've got litter going into it, and I just felt really sad for it that it was being subject to all of these impacts and insults. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could pull a group together to help give it a little bit of love and increase the awareness? And we've been working, our local council, Ku-ring-gai Council, has been fantastic with the help that they've given. Sydney Water, who's responsible for the assets, we're now working with them, and they were able to go and mend it's not a manhole anymore, is it? An access chamber that was leaking. So they were able to go and do that because we identified it and brought it to them. So we've been getting a lot of wins actually. And what we'd like to do is use it as a pilot for working with the local high schools that are in the catchment for drainage for the creek as well. We'd really love to set up an online water quality monitoring station, collect data, and then be able to use those data as a real life case study for teaching statistics and ecology and environmental impacts, and make it real rather than just looking at a bunch of data that somebody's got from somewhere.
Annette, this podcast is listened to, I believe, in 92 different countries. If somebody is listening to what you did with One Creek and maybe they want to do a similar program, what would you suggest?
The first thing is to mobilize your community. And we have a website called onestreet.earth, and that has a lot of free templates on how you can pull together your community, get your community around you, and then start to think of projects that you could do together. So get your group together first. And then what we're starting to do with One Creek is develop some procedures, as we talked at the beginning of the podcast, how important it is to have good procedures and systems in place. So we're starting to develop a playbook that people could then access to start doing their own One Creek.
Something else you do that I absolutely love is you go into our high schools and you talk about the importance of water and what people can do, and probably even let them know that there's a career in water. I believe we need to do a lot more of that. Can you advise the Scaling Up Nation on some of the things that you do with high school students? So maybe we can repeat that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I really love about the water industry, it's so blooming diverse. You could do anything within the water industry. It used to be very much the domain of engineers and then scientists. But now we have psychologists, we've got storytellers, we've got artists, we've got journalists, we've got a whole range of people. And we really promote something that we call STEAM power. So it's science, technology, engineering, art, and maths. So it's not just the STEM, it's the art and design component as well, because as engineers and scientists, we're generally not very good communicators, and we design things that we think people will want or they should have, but it might not be what the people want. So we have to go, who is the end user? What do they want? How will they perceive this particular aspect? And then work back from that. So it's really that design-led, or I suppose customer-driven design. So we focus a lot on that. So when I do the talks, I talk about the water cycle, talk about some of the stuff that we've done. In fact, when my kids were very little, I used to go into their daycare as well and talk about what happens to my poo. And that was wonderful. So I talked a lot about, what you shouldn't put down the toilet as well. And one little girl put her hand up and said, "My daddy does really big poos." I said, "It's okay. It's still a poo. It can go down the toilet. It's all right." It's amazing what kids are concerned about, isn't it? But I showed them, when you go to a sewage treatment plant and you got all of the bubbling coming up to mix the sewage so the bugs can get to it, showed them that, and they thought that was wonderful. And yeah, so kids are really responsive to that type of thing. And if we create the awareness, it just starts people thinking. And in fact, I was at the high school recently for something else, and one of the parents who I'd known for a while came up to me and said, "My daughter was at that talk that you gave. She's so interested now to go into a career in water. So thank you very much." And it really made my day. It was super.
That's fantastic. Annette, you work in both the public and the private sector. Those are two sectors that don't work well with each other. What are some ways you think we can get them working better together so we can really solve problems?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. I think there's good and bad on both sides. Some of the public utilities can be quite siloed. So sometimes it's difficult for, people to talk across departments. With the private side that we've worked with, so in New South Wales, we have the Water Industry Competition Act, and that allows private water utilities to operate in this jurisdiction. And it's actually been great because it was originally formed to prevent anti-competitive practices, there just being one utility, for instance. But what it's done is it's spawned a whole range of private utilities who are actually very nimble. We work with a lot of them, and they've been able to achieve really great things. They're nimble, they can scale easily, they can come in and do some of the developments, for instance, that the large utilities might not be able to do. So they've worked really well. But on the other side, if we've got public-private partnerships or the large utilities contracting out some of their treatment plants and operation and maintenance of those treatment plants, for instance, to a private concern, it's really important that we have very clear contracts in place. We've seen a lot of contracts that have been put in place that we've been asked to come in and audit that have not clearly stipulated appropriate water quality objectives at the right place, not stipulated monitoring. So we now developed a set of 5 things that we look at, and we've developed an auditing checklist for that. So it's quantity, quality, maintenance, ownership, and operations. So all of those 5 aspects have to be included in your agreement to get it right. And a friend of mine, Megan Dyson, who's a water lawyer and water law and policy specialist in Adelaide, we worked on that together. It was interesting to have, I'm not a proper lawyer, I'm just a paralegal. So Megan's a proper lawyer. So it was good to be able to bring our 2 skill sets together to be able to develop that up. So I think that's, it really does come back to the governance. Let's get the governance right so we can make sure everything else then just flows.
Looking ahead, what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will have the most significant impact on water risk management in the next decade?
We've already talked about AI. I think agents that we develop and teach will have a big impact on that. But it's amazing how many of the common things still keep occurring. So I don't think we can take our eye off the prize in making sure we never waste a good incident and making sure we pick it apart and make sure that people don't do the same thing again. So I think we just have to make sure we still keep sight of the basics and make sure that we resource and support them appropriately. I think having that clear link to our customers is going to be important, like what exactly do they want? And I know a lot of utilities now have customer advisory groups, which is fantastic. And a lot of utilities are putting customers at the heart of what they do. But I think we shouldn't lose sight as well of the emerging hazards. So making sure that they don't come and, we have a saying in Australia that they don't come and bite you on the bum. So things like, microplastics, PFAS, everybody's talking about PFAS, but really it's been coming for a long time. And I suppose looking at what we allow into our sewer catchments, into our water catchments, getting that right as well is going to be really important to make sure that we continue to produce safe, reliable water for future generations.
Annette, if you could only get one point across today, what do you want that point to be?
We've got to love water. We've got to make sure that people are aware of water, not only the technocrats, but also the people who are using it. Oftentimes when we speak to people, they go, oh, we didn't know all of that went into producing our water. Oh, that's why we have to pay our rates to make sure that our pipes are working properly, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, we have to really love water and be aware of water. And as professionals, make sure that we get that message across as well.
Well, Annette, I've really enjoyed following you across LinkedIn. So we're going to make sure on the show notes page, if somebody wants to learn more about you and the work that you do, it'd be very easy for them to find. I do have some lightning round questions for you if you're ready for those.
Yep.
Annette, if you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a microbiologist, what advice would you give yourself?
Probably not to worry so much. I used to be so anxious and worry. I still worry a bit, but yeah, don't worry. Just have fun.
What are the last few books that you've read?
So I belong to a book club that's across several continents. So we all used to work together, and now we're disparate. So we have a book club. So I've read The Overstory. I'm currently reading The Three-Body Problem, and I've read The Covenant of Water, all of which I can thoroughly recommend.
We'll make sure to have links to those on our show notes page. Well, when Hollywood hears this podcast, they're going to want to make a movie about your life. Who do you want to play Dr. Annette Davison?
So I have a lot of respect for Helen Mirren. So I'd hope it would be someone who would be sassy and irreverent. So Helen Mirren, I think, would be my choice.
She would be lucky to get the part.
Oh.
My last question, if you could talk to anybody throughout history, who would it be with and why?
So I think it would be people who have been not visible in history, but have really contributed a lot. So it would be some of the wonderful female pioneers in science and technology. So Florence Nightingale, for instance, she would be fantastic. Katherine Johnson, from a maths perspective, and Rosalind Franklin as well. And I'd like to ask them about their experiences and how they managed to succeed in a male-dominated world. What tools and techniques did they have at the time? Because it was very much a male-dominated world. I mean, it still is to a large extent. But yeah, just how did they keep going when a lot of the work that they did was taken over by men, So I think Rosalind Franklin, for instance, was very much important in looking at DNA and the crystallography and stuff behind that and looking at the structure. But we never hear about her. And similarly with Katherine Johnson, but then we had the Hollywood movie about that, and Florence Nightingale, I think we all know about. So knowing more about those sorts of female pioneers would be fantastic.
Well, Dr. Annette Davison, the water risk doctor, thank you so much for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute delight. And as I mentioned, I've done one podcast before, but this was just delightful, so well organized. And I'm really, really humbled that you asked me to be part of it. So thank you very much.
Annette, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Annette was amazing. We had some technical difficulties the first time that we were trying to meet, and she was so gracious. She said, hey, these things happen. We'll get it fixed. We, of course, did. And I really appreciate the grace that she gave me during that. Sometimes servers just decide that they want to update at the most inconvenient time. And what do? Well, we rescheduled and we had a great conversation before we hit the record button and after we hit the record button. And I sure learned a lot by talking with Annette. And how awesome is it that we have people out there that are just such great advocates for water and for our public health. Annette sent me a mug about waterborne pathogens, making people aware of waterborne pathogens. And I got it here on my desk. She shipped it all the way from Australia to Atlanta, Georgia, United States. So, Annette, thank you for the mug. People kind of look at me a little weird when I drink out of it, but it starts a conversation. And I know that that is exactly what you were hoping to do with that. Now, it's my hope that you're thinking about supply chain and all the things that Annette was talking about with how we harmonize approaches across all of our borders. How we make sure that we're defining clear roles and who's responsible for what risk. How do we look at both prevention and response? And how do we make sure that when we're looking at projects that we're not only learning from previous projects, but we're making improvements on each future project. So many things that Annette gave us to unpack. Now, one of the things we've been doing on every single episode this year, and the Scaling Up Nation has told me they absolutely love it. Others have told me at AWT they had no idea what I was talking about. What is it that I'm talking about? Well, Nation, I am talking about our discussion guides. I want to make it as easy as possible for you to take this content and bring it to your team. So how do you do that? How do you lead a discussion? Sometimes that can be very intimidating. It can be very daunting. Well, we've made it very easy for you. You can download a discussion guide, and these are the questions that you can send out to your team, and then they can come to that meeting having listened to this podcast, and they can answer these questions. We try to make it easy for everybody to elevate their knowledge in industrial water treatment. And of course, whenever we have a new guest, we want to bring the things that they're bringing to us into your life. And a real easy way to do that is to download a discussion guide. Now, how do you get a discussion guide? Well, that's even easier. You go to scalinguph2o.com, and then you will see a pop-up for the discussion guide, and you can simply enter your email address and we will send you the discussion guide. Now, if you don't see that pop-up, maybe you have a pop-up blocker on, then just scroll down to that episode in the show notes page and you will see a place where you can download that. We try to make it as easy as possible. And for the people out there in the Scaling Up Nation that have used these, they have told us they absolutely love them. But there were people standing around when people were talking about the discussion guides, and they were saying, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, now they do, and now hopefully they are able to use the discussion guides. So take advantage of all the hard work that our team here at the Scaling Up H2O podcast is doing for you, and learn even more after the episode, and invite that learning into your team by downloading a discussion guide. Well, Nation, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I sure enjoy meeting new people like Annette and bringing those interviews to you. So thank you for listening to this podcast. I would not have this opportunity if you weren't listening to this podcast. And I want to make sure I have this opportunity for a very long time. So if you are in a conversation about water treatment, please add to that conversation. Do you know about the Scaling Up H2O podcast? Now, how we are finding new members of the Scaling Up Nation is actually through the Scaling Up Nation. Now, we try to do campaigns, we try to do outreaches, we try to do all these things from our side. But the biggest bang that we get is from all of you out there in the Scaling Up Nation, where you are helping us broaden the reach of this podcast so we can make this industry better by making this audience bigger and adding to the Scaling Up Nation. So if you would please help us help you, make sure whenever you're talking to another person in this industry that you bring up this podcast, because that's how we're going to meet new guests. That's how we are going to be able to do new things. And I thank you for all the people that have already been doing that. And I'm thanking all the people that are getting ready to do that. Nation, I hope you have a good rest of your week. And of course, we'll have a brand new episode for you next week. Until then, take care, folks. Ready to boost your water treatment expertise? Our Certified Water Technologist Prep course is designed to give you the confidence and skills you need to sign up for the Certified Water Technologist examination. Test your knowledge with our 100-question practice exam and learn what you need to succeed. Go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep to get started today.